Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto-Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're talking bets for the YellaWood 500 here on Running Hot. Last weekend, William Byron stole a win away from Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson at Texas Motor Speedway after Larson spun out while racing Wallace for the lead. And then Bubba Wallace lost the lead to Byron, as well as losing second place to Ross Chastain on that last restart. Bubba coming home third. Several playoff drivers had issues in addition to Larson's wreck. Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, they were involved in their own wrecks. Tyler Reddick didn't have a great finish. So a lot of interesting big names on the outside of the playoff picture looking in with two races left in the round. Of course, this weekend at Talladega, next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. So a little bit of some interesting races there as well. So Stevie, first of all, Texas, I know for me it wasn't the best mile-and-a-half race we've had all year, but I didn't think it was that bad. You could make some passes, and it was certainly hard to handle your cars. We saw Larson spin out. We saw Kyle Busch have issues. What did you think of Texas, first of all, and then we'll talk playoff picture next?
So I have two thoughts, right? And it's kind of like, I don't know how to put it, but like, these are my thoughts. So I'm just going to say it. Like, first, I think the tire that Goodyear brought was too safe, but I'm also happy that we didn't have a ton of tires blowing out. But with that, what I'm trying to say by that is we shouldn't have guys pulling away from guys with new tires on 25 lap old tires. Like, tires need to matter a little bit. Like, if you make a strategy call on a 1.5 and your tires are 25 laps fresher than the guy that's running two cars in front of you, you should blow the doors off on the car that has 25 lap old tires. So I feel like there's still testing and stuff that needs to happen as far as like the tire test at Texas. Cause I mean, they've done a great job elsewhere. But that was my biggest takeaway. The racing, like you said, wasn't phenomenal, but it was still like, if you had a fast car, you could pass. And that's what we were kind of hoping for. So, Bubba got to win that race. At the end of the day, you have to win that race. If you're in his position, you got to win that race. He raced Kyle Larson super clean, and I mean, Kyle lost it. He said that he lost it. Kyle is still +2 above the cut line. So we have, I mean, really the odds-on favorite coming into this round, Kyle Larson at +2 above the cut line, heading into Talladega and the Roval. He's in trouble when you look at his history on those tracks. So be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, man, if you're Bubba Wallace, great job finishing third, running up towards the front. You gotta finish that one. You gotta finish that one. But overall, not bad. I mean, way better than some of the flat tracks we've had this year. But like you said, 1.5 wise, I'd put it towards the back of the list. Still, I just, this car performs so much better on the 1.5s.
Yeah, and I mean, Bubba had that great restart to get alongside Larson there and kind of keep him pinned down, but still racing clean. Like you said, there was no contact. Unfortunately, that next restart is what bit Bubba Wallace, and he statistically has been the best restarter in NASCAR this year. He mentioned he decided to take the outside because it worked the previous restart, but he knew Chase Briscoe, who restarted alongside of him, was tight. And so maybe in hindsight, taking that inside line where Chase Briscoe doesn't push up a little bit into Bubba Wallace was the way to go, because that allowed William Byron to get 3 wide, get underneath Bubba for the race win there. But you mentioned the playoff picture. Kyle Larson currently 2 points to the good. Bubba Wallace, amazingly enough, 2 points behind the cut line. They are the playoff bubble. Also below the playoff bubble, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, and Kyle Busch. Like I said, those three had rough finishes, all 25th or worse. Looking ahead of the cut line, Kyle Larson, like we said, is +2, 6 points ahead of him. Brad Keselowski, 4 points ahead of that, is Ross Chastain. And then we got all the rest of our playoff drivers as well. So what are your thoughts just overall on the playoff picture with 2 races left before we get into our bets?
Teamwork matters at Talladega. So, just kind of looking at who's in, who's not in. Is this a week that Buescher pushes Keselowski because Keselowski is so close and Buescher's in a really good spot at +22? So like thinking about that, thinking about like teammates that like Alex Bowman, does Penske Logano help Blaney as much as possible. Like that kind of stuff is in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're a playoff driver, everything is in play right now because you're in Talladega. There's going to be issues, and really, no one's safe outside of maybe Denny Hamlin. Like Denny Hamlin can have a really bad Talladega race and
Yeah.
still be okay.
Yes.
Um,
We'll talk about that
yeah,
specifically with one of my
I saw
picks.
the sheet. So yeah, I mean, playoff wise, good for William Byron. I have him 16-1 ticket that we talked about preseason, so I'm really hoping to cash that. But good for him. I mean, he took advantage of a bad restart and won the race that he shouldn't have won. So
Yeah.
good for him.
6th win this year for William Byron, which is incredible. I mean, that gives him just those 6 wins gives him 30 playoff points, not even counting the stage wins, as it'll reset going into into Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And he's, of course, locked in there. So, I mean, he's going to be looking really good to get to Phoenix, barring some major issues at some pretty predictable tracks. So that's pretty solid there for William Byron. But it is time to preview Talladega. I don't think we need to give too much of a preview here. It's super speedway racing. It's always the same kind of thing at Daytona and Talladega. Little subtle differences between them, and then obviously the playoff picture makes some differences. So, Stevie, what are you expecting from this race, and kind of how are you handicapping it versus like a Daytona and with the playoff scenarios as well? You already gave a little bit of that with like the teammate stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the teammate thing is definitely like non-statistical kind of looking at this race in that aspect of like, if it comes down to the end of the race, is Logano going to try to pass Blaney, or is he going to push him to the next round of the playoffs? And I mean, I feel like most situations you're going to push your teammate to a win. Even Logano, I wholeheartedly believe that Logano or Cindric would push Blaney to a win. Even like Cindric, like you don't have a win, but you're locked into that team for next year. You know your contract situation. Yeah, you want to
your
win.
Dad's the team president.
Yeah, like you want to win, but like your team succeeding money wise helps a ton. And if you win a championship, there's huge money incentive to winning a championship. So, that is something that's super interesting. Austin Dillon is a great, super speedway racer. Is he going to helping Kyle Busch? Well, yeah, of course he is. You know who else is going to be helping Kyle Busch? AJ Allmendinger and Justin Haley. That camp is going to be helping Kyle Busch. So just kind of thinking about like that, the team that's super interesting this week as a whole, for this race in particular, is Stewart-Haas. They have no playoff whatsoever. So who do they help? Themselves. I mean, they go out and they try to win a race here. Do they, try to get Kevin Harvick his final win of his career? I mean, this is probably his best chance outside of Phoenix. So, kind of looking at that, I do feel like after last week and how many people had issues in the playoff picture last week that we get a pretty aggressive Talladega race. And not just at not just at the end. I think the beginning of this race is going to be somewhat aggressive, stage points and stuff like that, especially because of all the issues last week. So I think from start to finish, one, we know with this new car, track position matters so much on super speedways.
Yes.
And
much harder to get to the front than in previous cars.
And then two, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, Tyler Reddick, Bubba Walt, they're all below the cut line. These are all aggressive super speedway racers. I think that we get a very aggressive race throughout, and track position being so important that we're going to see a lot of 3-wide racing this weekend, I feel.
I think it's interesting for the win. I mean, you mentioned Stewart-Haas, but let's look at Legacy Motor Club. They're in it to win it, right? Or Front Row Motorsports with Gilliland, Michael McDowell. They're in it to win it. They're all on the, either eliminated from the playoffs or never made the playoffs. So they just want to win. And they know if they put pressure on another playoff driver on that last lap, that other playoff driver cannot afford to wreck. They can't afford to make the reckless block. So that gives them a little bit of an advantage in that regards, where they can be extra aggressive coming to the checkered flag at Talladega. And we always know with that start-finish line move further down the tri-oval, there's often not even a last lap pass, not even a last corner pass, a last straightaway pass for the win at Talladega. So it's going to be a super interesting race. And a lot of these guys in the playoff picture that aren't in it can put a lot of pressure if they don't have teammates already in. And even Justin Haley, he's going to a different team next year. I don't know what incentive is necessarily there for him, particularly, especially because he hasn't always worked well with his teammates in the past at these super speedway races. So definitely a lot of interesting dynamics, but it is time, I should say, to dive into our bets for Talladega. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around the track. That is 4 turns, 1 pick from Stevie, 1 pick from me, Rotodoc, per turn before we drive in a victory lane. So it is time to take the green flag for Talladega. All right, we're barreling off into turn 1, green flag. Everybody being aggressive, pushing into turn 1. What do you got for us, Stevie?
I mean, I feel like I said it already, but I'm going to go Kevin Harvick. He's 30-1 on BetMGM. This is going to be a half unit bet for me. Like I told Nick pre-show that I have 8 outrights already this week. All of them are half units and all of them are big odds. So this is one of the first times in weeks that I'm showing a lot of value just in general. And I mean, Kevin Harvick is someone that tries to run up to the front with the new car. You know, his average running position is one of the highest when he's not wrecked out. Him and Amarola, like both teammates, like they want to run towards the front of the pack. So it's always about avoiding issues as far as like wrecks and stuff. But there is no way that Kevin Harvick is pushing anybody to a win in this race. If he has an opportunity, he's going to checkers or wreckers. So if he might be the most aggressive driver on the field if he's up in the top 5 with 5 laps to go. So give me Kevin Harvick. And this is, I mean, there's not a ton of statistics outside of the fact that like his average running position is where we want to see for a winner at this race. It's just more of, he's not helping anybody except for himself. Kevin Harvick 30-1 is where I'm going turn 1, half unit bet.
I like it. This is one of his last chances ever to win a race in the Cup Series, and he is going to take that opportunity if the opportunity presents itself. For me, my turn 1 pick, I'm going with another 30-1 bet as well at BetMGM, just like you, half a unit, and I'm going Eric Jones, 30-1. This dude is good at super speedways. He's super aggressive, just like Kevin Harvick is going to be very aggressive. Eric Jones is just aggressive himself at super speedways. He always finds himself towards the front, and he doesn't even do it with teammate help. Like, Noah Gragson hasn't helped him this year, really. Last year, Ty Dillon didn't really help him get to the front of these races. He has a rookie teammate now, Carson Hocevar, who I don't know how much they're going to be able to work together. But Eric Jones always finds himself at the front of these super speedway races, especially in the next-gen car. But even, back before the next-gen car, he was winning super speedway races. He's won a race at Daytona. He won a heat race, an exhibition race at Daytona. He's had multiple top finishes at both Talladega and super speedway. So Eric Jones, for me, I'm going to take him 30-1. Like Kevin Harvick, he has every reason to be aggressive and just try to grab a win because he's sitting here on a winless season as well.
And they don't care about helping Chevy.
Not at all. Not at all. They're moving to Toyota.
So I'm on this one too. I told you that I had 8. This is one of my 8 outrights that I have this week. So I'm right there with you. Love the aggressiveness that Eric Jones has on these racetracks. Like you said, with the new car, I mean, he's someone that is going to get up there and mix it up and try to run up towards the front. So finished 6th in this race last year and had one of the best quality pass percentages. I like Eric Jones as well this week.
Nice. And I like Kevin Harvick 30-1. I should be clear there. So both of us, Stevie and I, on 30-1 bets at BetMGM for turn 1. So we got to go into turn 2. All right, turn 2, Stevie. Where are we going?
Going right back to BetMGM.
Like it.
Michael McDowell on BetMGM is 35-1. And this is another half unit outright that I like this week. Again, I said at the beginning, there's a lot of value this week on outrights, and Michael McDowell's one of them. Again, he's not helping anybody. He finished 3rd in this race last year. He has a Daytona 500 win. He's aggressive on these racetracks now, where you don't see the Michael McDowell sit back to the end, try to be there at the end of the race type of McDowell races anymore. So I love the aggressiveness. I love the fact that he doesn't have a teammate or stake in this where he has to worry about it. And this is a team that is fielding 3 cars this weekend. So love the upside here for front row. And I think they're really interesting across the board as far as like some top 10s for Herps and, Ford outrights. So I like McDowell at 35-1 this week.
Yeah, McDowell's always interesting for me. I'm never on him unless he's like over 60. just because even though he can be more aggressive and stuff like that, he has led a total of 9 laps in the last 24 super speedway races. So I'm not going to be on him. I definitely get why you are. But for me, not on Michael McDowell. I want to see more laps led. I want to see him running in the front more rather than being gifted the front. But I totally get it. I mean, the guy has been in contention to win better than 1 out of every 35 times at super speedway races. For my turn 2 pick, I'm going to go a little weird here. I'm going to take drivers to win the pole, and I'm going to go with Christopher Bell at 16-1, Ty Gibbs 20-1, Martin Truex Jr. 28-1. All of those are going to be half a unit, and then one more, Riley Herbst 125-1. I'm going to go 0.2 units on that. So starting with the first 3 drivers, all half a unit. They're all Toyota Joe Gibbs Racing drivers. Toyota has won all 3 poles at Talladega in the next gen car. Christopher Bell has won 2 of those 3 poles himself, so 16-1. Pretty interesting there. He started 6th, so his average start is 2.7 at Dega in the next gen car. And Christopher Bell has also won 5 of the last 11 pole positions in all of NASCAR Cup Series racing. I know that's not really predictive, just an interesting little backup stat there on how well he has qualified in general recently. Ty Gibbs, he has a start of 3rd at Talladega, and then the one that he made last year, he started 10th, but he didn't get to make a final round qualifying lap. It's likely he would have started 7th or 6th, or maybe even better, based off the way most drivers improve from their first lap to their second lap. His first lap would have put him around 7th or 6th, or even maybe a little bit better, depending on the improvement there. And then Martin Truex Jr. also has 2 top 7 starts, including a 2nd place at the 3 Talladega Super Speedway races. And Toyota themselves, I mean, they only have 6 cars, right? So they can only put in these 3 Talladega races a maximum of 18 cars inside that final round qualifying. They've put 12 of the 18 possible. So 67% of their qualifying efforts have ended up in a top 10. So that's pretty darn good for Toyota there. For Riley Herbst, well, he's in that front row motorsports car, but that's really being prepared by Stewart-Haas Racing. And he actually ended up qualifying 6th at the most recent super speedway race at Daytona. Ford has been fast in qualifying all year at super speedways. Doesn't matter if it's Atlanta, Talladega, Daytona. They've been so fast. Ford and Toyota took the top 8 spots in the first Talladega race, and Riley Herbst didn't participate in that one. But Stewart-Haas cars did qualify 2nd and 4th there. And again, at the most recent race at Daytona, all 5, if I'm counting Riley Herbst, of the Stewart-Haas cars started inside the top 10. So 125-1. Yeah, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit there on Riley Herbst.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't typically bet qualifying bets, but you make some interesting points as far as Toyota. Like Bell, just looking at the next gen era, Bell has started inside the top 5 in 4 of the 7 races, and like you said, started on the pole both races at Talladega. 3 straight poles. He's been the playoff pole king so far to start the playoffs, and I think the record's 5 or 6. So he's closing in on the record, But no, I mean, track position at Talladega mattering so much that these cars are trimmed out more than ever when we come to these racetracks, and seeing the statistics and stuff and the trends for Toyota is definitely very interesting here.
Yeah, so a little interesting there in turn 2. And then we got this nice, long, beautiful backstretch before we get into turn 3. I do want to remind you all that Running Hot is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, it is time to dive into turn 3. All right, Stevie, let's get some good ones here in turn 3.
Yeah, I tweet out all the time, scheduled tweet when there's something that is just funny to me. That happens, like Bell's issues on pit road. That's just standard at this point. But this should be a scheduled bet. Ty Dillon, top 10, plus 850. I have a half unit on this one. It's just something that I always bet at super speedways. He's finished 11th twice with the next gen car on super speedways. We almost got this at Daytona. He was running 8th on the last lap and ended up finishing 11th in that race. So Really thought we were getting the top 10. He just puts himself in like really good positions in these super speedway races. He's not going to win the race. I have every like thought in my brain telling me that he's not going to win this race, but he is going to be there at the end. He's not the aggressive type. If we don't get a ton of crashes, he finishes like 25th. But if we get some issues, which we should at Talladega, especially how aggressive we think this race is going to play out, he should be there at the end of this race. So I like Ty Dillon top 10 plus 850.
Yeah, I like it too. I'm going to be right there with you, half a unit on Ty Dillon plus 850. And that's going to lead me into my turn 3 pick. I'm taking Chandler Smith plus 750 for a top 10 finish. For me, these guys, Ty Dillon, Chandler Smith, they're not all the same. Like, I do love how Ty Dillon, like you said, puts himself in really good positions. But in terms of the equipment, I mean, he's in a Colleague car. In the Colleague cars, they can compete at these super speedway races. I mean, Justin Haley was almost leading at the big rain race last year at Daytona. And it's just, these guys are in equipment that can absolutely compete for a top 10. They're solid drivers. Chandler Smith, very solid driver, finished really well in the Truck Series overall, is running well in Xfinity, has a race win there. And, looking at the Truck Series, he led the most laps at Daytona in one of his Daytona starts in the Truck Series, finished 15th in his one and only, I should say, super speedway start in the Cup Series. That was that Daytona race just recently. So, these odds are just too long for your Ty Gibbs, for your Chandler Smiths, when they're anything above like 5.5, 6 to 1, something like that. I just want to play these guys for a top 10 finish, just because all we need is one of these two guys to hit to make a pretty nice profit here.
The one thing I've noticed when I was looking at the data heading into the weekend, and I mean, just worries me a little bit, but also potentially helps Chandler Smith, is like the Colleague cars have sat back a lot more with the next gen cars. Like, we know how aggressive they were in Xfinity. We know how aggressive they were the year before we had the next gen car, but they both AJ and Haley average running position outside the top 20. That could potentially help Chandler Smith. I feel like you're putting Chandler Smith in this car to get him laps. So like, you kind of just want him to sit back if you're the owner and like just getting laps here. So again, it's kind of the same situation with Ty Dillon. If there's no cautions and like we get a clean race, we probably don't get this like top 10. But if we do get like a normal Talladega race, this has upside.
Yeah, exactly. So top 10 bets for turn 3. We got one turn left, and that is turn 4. One more turn, like I said, Stevie. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to go to a winning manufacturer bet here, and it's Toyota plus 350. And they're plus 350 because they have a lot less cars in the field than Ford and Chevy. But quality of car matters so much, and you already talked about it when you were talking about the Toyota, poll bets. This team, or this organization, manufacturer has, I say organization, 23-11. 23-11 JGR, like the same thing in my head. But they have started on the pole every single one of these races, and we have 5 playoff drivers of the 6 Toyotas that are going to be in the field. They're going to be up there mixing it up. We talked about Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick being below the cut line. They're not sitting back. They need stage points. They're going to be running for track position. Have you ever seen Denny Hamlin sit back at a super speedway race? No. I've seen him back out of the pack and drive right back up to the front of the field because he's so good at these racetracks. But I mean, the one guy you always worry about is Truex. He needs a good race too. Like, am I worried that Truex wouldn't block for a win? Sure. He's a lot better points wise. Am I a little worried that Denny Hamlin doesn't block for a win? I mean, is Denny going to block either one of his cars if they're passing him in the front? Probably not. Let's be honest. Come on, man. So I like this one. I think that Toyota is going to have speed this weekend. And I think, like, again, quality of car. They are going to be really six really good cars is kind of what I'm trying to say. So quality of car, I'll play that against the numbers and the odds here and take Toyota plus 350.
Yeah, I like it. I think Toyota has a great chance to win this race. They are really strong. All their drivers are very strong overall. So this is the Toyota turn, and I'm going to go for my turn 4 pick to 3 top Toyota bets. I'm going to take Tyler Reddick at plus 625, Ty Gibbs at plus 700, and Martin Truex Jr. at plus 700. First of all, I just like these values regardless. There's only 5 Toyotas. If they were all equal, 5 to 1 would be fair. Now, yes, probably Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin should be short in terms of the odds here because of the two best Toyotas at this track type. But after that, everybody else is kind of the same, even Christopher Bell. So, like, if everybody was plus 550, plus 575, even plus 600 for the other four, I think that would be pretty fair. But also, there is a little bit, and I'm not saying a lot, but there's a little bit of a deal here where Denny Hamlin, if it's getting crazy around him, he could back out and just try to, avoid some late mayhem to just pull off a respectable finish. It doesn't have to be great. And here's why. Last year, Joey Logano came into this race 30 points ahead of the cut line. He had 3,071 points after Texas, and the cut line was 30-41, so he was plus 30. Denny Hamlin is plus 37. He is 3,074 versus 3,037. So Denny Hamlin's actually in an even better spot than Joey Logano. And Joey Logano just did not try at the end of the race there. He just rode around at the back of the pack and finished 27th. And that was good enough to get him a nice, comfortable points cushion going into the Roval. It wasn't amazingly good, but it was better than wrecking and finishing 2 or 3 laps down and losing even more points. So Denny Hamlin has even more reason to potentially, I'm not saying you will, but potentially back out of it. And instead of being in the mix for, like, if he's in there like 8th, 9th, and it's getting wild right in front of him, he could just pull off to the side a little bit and finish 18th or 21st. And that's going to be totally fine for him. He'll be going into the Roval with at least a 20-25 point cushion there, especially if you grab some stage points. So I think this is a spot where the favored Toyota has incentive to not go crazy here at the end of this race, which will open the door for the other 5 Toyotas. And then we're just taking the 3 Toyotas with the longest odds. It's a 3v2 at that point, if that were to happen. Do I think it'll happen? Not necessarily. Denny Hamlin is not that kind of guy, like you mentioned. He will occasionally back out if it's getting weird and then drive back through the field. But I think if he backs out of it, if it's getting weird towards the end here, there is absolutely a good reason to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Reddick's in a great spot. He is really good on super speedways, and he needs a good points day. He's really good at road courses, so if he can set himself up for a good day here, he'll be really good going into the Roval. I think Ty Gibbs is the really interesting one here. If we have some issues and like some of the Toyotas wreck, and he doesn't really need to help his teammates, he can be very aggressive at the end of this race. And honestly, Martin Truex Jr., it's eventually going to happen. He's eventually going to win one of these races. So
yes, he will.
He's one of the outrights that I have this week. It's very rare that we get like Truex at 25 to 1. So I took that earlier this week. So yeah, I mean, overall, this should be the Toyota corner, and it's not on purpose, but I think both of us are showing a lot of value on the Toyotas this week. And I think it's just the books are like basing it off of numbers of cars more than like talent this week.
I agree. I think that's it's more a car count issue, but I think Toyota is going to be really strong this weekend, which does lead us in the victory lane. We've completed the 4 turns, completed the lap of Talladega. We're going back to a Toyota for victory lane. So, Stevie, what is the victory lane pick for Talladega?
Yeah, as much as I wanted to, fist bump you with like Ryan Preece and Chase Briscoe with their amazing paint schemes, we're going to go back to the Toyota camp for our victory lane pick this week and go Tyler Reddick 30 to 1 to get the W this week. Again, like just showing value overall on the Toyotas. We know that Tyler Reddick is an aggressive super speedway racer. I mean, if he wrecks this week being aggressive, he plays the pit early strategy twice next week at the Roval and puts himself in a position to try to win the Roval. So I think we're going to see a guy that's below the cut line be aggressive for stage points and to try to win this race. I think 23-11 is going to be aggressive in general. So we're getting much better odds on Reddick than we are on Bubba. Bubba is like 14 to 15 to 1, and we're getting Reddick at double odds. And honestly, Reddick's had just as much success on super speedways.
Yeah, exactly. Reddick has come close to winning before. I mean, I know he made some aggressive moves at Daytona once with that Richard Childress car and ended up wrecking out from the lead.
He pushed Austin Dillon to the win last year at Daytona, where he could have tried to win the race.
Exactly. So Tyler Reddick, very solid at 30 to 1. I like him a lot at 30 to 1 as well. So I'm going to be on that with you. Tyler Reddick, 30-1, our victory lane pick for Talladega. So that is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to the YellaWood 500 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. We'll be back here next week, same time, same place as always, to talk about bets for the Bank of America Roval 400 over at the Charlotte Motor Speedway Road Course. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thank you again for listening. We'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.